The Levite Sotah, written by Ben-Tzion Spitz, narrated by Jennifer Kahen. The sun was setting over the Israelite camp. A young woman rushed to the Levite section. Her rhythmic gait mirrored the fast beating of her heart. "I hope he doesn't realize," Pnina thought. "He warned me not to go to Puria again, but I couldn't stop. I can't let anyone know about my meetings. I would die of shame." She paused as she approached Adiver standing in front of their tent in the Levite camp. His handsome and kind face had turned into a monstrous visage of pain and anger. In 5 years of marriage, Pnina had never seen her husband so furious. His fists were propped up against his waist. His face was a blazing red. His eyes bulged, and she could hear him gritting his teeth from a few feet away. "What's the matter?" she asked. Pnina noticed 2 somber men she did not recognize standing to the right of Adiver. "Wife of mine," Adiver barely contained his fury, "I hereby forbid thee in front of witnesses," he nodded at the men to his right, "from visiting or being alone with the man Puria, son of Damchus of the tribe of Reuven." Pnina opened her mouth but made no sound. How did he find out? I must use even more discretion next time. I must continue to see Puria. "Why are you so upset?" "Why am I upset?" Adiver responded. "We have spoken of this before. I have warned you repeatedly. I don't understand what business you have with that old man. It is forbidden for you to seclude yourself with another man." "But I have told you we are not doing anything inappropriate." "I don't believe you anymore. You refuse to tell me what you are doing with him. What am I supposed to think? You have now been formally warned. If you are found or reported one more time with that man, I will demand a divorce." "No! Adiver! You can't! I see him for us." "Then tell me what you are doing with him." "I can't!" Pnina looked down at the lengthening shadow of her small frame. "You have to trust me." "If you can't trust me and tell me, how do you expect me to trust you when you run off to this strange man?" "Oh, Adiver, you don't understand." Tears formed in Pnina's sparkling blue eyes. "There is no use speaking with you. Move out of the way. This is still my tent, and I would like to enter." Adiver stepped to the side. Pnina ducked into their tent with one hand covering her face. Pnina fell down on their simple cot without speaking further with Adiver. She felt her stomach and wondered, "Will you make it, little one? Will you survive where none before you did?" She cried herself to sleep, thinking of her multiple miscarriages and the tension it had created between her and Adiver. Pnina awoke to the sound of Adiver snoring next to her. From the opening of their tent, Pnina could still see the full moon setting. She knew the sun would rise within an hour. She thanked God that Adiver was a heavy sleeper and quietly left the tent. The moonlight falling on the array of tents made a mosaic of black and white patterns on the desert floor. Pnina had her shawl on and covered her face with a scarf. Her distinctive blue eyes sparkled with determination in the moonlight. She made her way to the tribe of Reuven, regularly looking behind her to see if she was being followed. She stopped at the entrance to the tent of Puria and checked to see if anyone was watching. She did not notice 2 men sitting quietly in the shadow of a tent across the path. Though she did not know their names, she would have recognized the pair. Pnina stood in front of the great Sanhedrin, the court of 71 elders, including Moses, the princes, and the senior judges. Pnina had cried and begged Adiver not to take this step, but he was adamant. He had been livid that she had yet again visited Puria despite his last warning. Her own father, Prince Nathaniel of the tribe of Issachar, had excused himself from the trial, surely shamed by the news now spreading through the camp. "My daughter," Moses addressed her, "if you sinned, admit it and end the marriage." "I did nothing wrong. Yes, I was secluded with Puria, but I did not touch him. I did not have any intimate relations with him. The legitimate business I had with him required privacy." "You were warned by your husband in front of witnesses. Witnesses saw you enter Puria's tent and remain there alone for an inappropriate length of time. The facts indicate your willful contravention of your husband and our laws. If you forcefully claim innocence, we shall have to test you with the bitter waters." "The bitter waters?" Yes, you will recall what happened to the last woman that drank from the bitter waters. She died a most painful death. This is how immorality is expunged from our midst, and it serves as a lesson to all. And what happens if the innocent drink from the water? They will be blessed with a healthy male child. I shall drink from the water, Pnina exclaimed loudly and firmly. Pnina stood in the courtyard of the tabernacle, facing Aaron the high priest. His sons, Eleazar and Itamar, stood on either side of him. A small table with parchment, ink, and a quill was nearby. Other Levites, many of them cousins of Adiver, stood around Pnina and the priests. Adiver and his parents hovered right outside the courtyard. A large assembly, mostly women, stood at the entrance watching the ceremony. Pnina grimaced as she remembered the last time she attended the Sotah ceremony and the gruesome ending. As ordered, she wore her simplest robe and shawl. She had removed all her jewelry, the beautiful sapphire necklace Adiver had given her, the gold bracelets and earrings she had received from her father. Pnina, Aaron told her, your husband warned you in front of witnesses not to seclude yourself with the man Piriah, son of Damchus, of the tribe of Reuven. You ignored his warning. The same witnesses saw you entering Piriah's tent. You were alone with him enough time to have intimate relations. You claim that you are innocent of any wrongdoing. I shall now administer the Sotah oath, the oath of the bitter waters in front of all of Israel as per our laws. You shall answer Amen twice after the oath. In a louder voice, Aaron declared, If a man has not lain with you, and you have not committed adultery, so as to be defiled to your husband, you shall be unharmed by this curse-bearing bitter water. But if you have committed adultery, and you have become defiled, because a man other than your husband has lain with you, God will make you into a curse and into an oath among your people, causing your thigh to rupture and your belly to swell. Pnina answered, Amen, Amen. Aaron went to the table, held the parchment down with his left hand, and with his right hand dipped the quill into the ink pot. On the parchment he wrote the oath he had just declared. Itamar, son of Aaron, brought him a clay jug filled with water. Eleazar, his brother, grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground of the tabernacle and sprinkled it onto the water in the jug. He then added a piece of wormwood into the dirty water. Aaron lifted the parchment and showed it to Pnina. This is one of our most sacred objects. The name of God is on this scroll. Once I place it in the water and his name is erased, there is no turning back. If you admit your sin now and leave your marriage, you will live. If not, and the bitter water finds you guilty, you will die. The waters will not only test you. Aaron looked across the entrance to the courtyard and was able to spot Adiver standing in the crowd. The water can also sense if your husband has been unfaithful. If he has been unfaithful, then you will be spared. Pnina shifted her weight from one foot to the other, looked down at her own bare feet. Proceed. Aaron carefully placed the scroll of parchment into the jug, and with a short wooden stick stirred the parchment in the water. The water, though still cold, started to bubble. Aaron stirred and kept looking at the soaking parchment to make sure all of the writing was erased. The water bubbled violently. Cold steam rose from the jug. Women in the assembly uttered curses at Pnina. Eleazar approached Pnina and grabbed her robe by the collar with both hands. In a quick, violent motion, he ripped the robe halfway down her chest. He then removed her head covering and ruffled her hair until it was a wild mop. A Levite brought a rope to Eleazar and tied it under her armpits, which then held her ripped robe together. The murmuring of the assembly grew louder. Another Levite gave Eleazar a metal bowl of ground barley meal. Eleazar handed it to Pnina. Itamar gave the jug with the still bubbling water to Aaron. Eleazar stepped aside to make way for Aaron to face Pnina. Aaron instructed the surrounding Levites. If she starts to convulse, remove her from the sanctuary immediately. We do not want her death to defile this holy ground. Wait! Pnina held her stomach and looked at it. I can't do this. It's not worth the risk. It's too late. The name of God has been erased, said Aaron. You will drink the water. You cannot force me. I will not drink. We can force you and you will drink. Aaron nodded to Eleazar and Itamar. They each stood on either side of Pnina and grabbed her arms. Pnina's metal bowl clanged to the ground, with most of the barley staying in it. Aaron brought the jug to Pnina's mouth. She refused to open her mouth and shook her head from side to side. Aaron nodded again. Eleazar and Itamar forced Pnina to her knees. With one hand, Eleazar forced Pnina's mouth open. Aaron brought the jug to her lips and poured the dark, bubbling water down her throat. Pnina gagged on the water and coughed some of it out. Aaron stopped pouring. Eleazar and Itamar let go of her. Pnina kneeled, face to the ground, coughing with dark spittle dripping from her mouth. Eleazar picked up the metal bowl, placed it in her hand, and with his hand under hers, waved the bowl in the 4 compass directions, as well as up and down. He then removed the bowl from her hand, walked it to the nearby altar, and threw some of the meal onto the fire. The priests, the Levites, and the entire assembly watched in rapt attention. Pnina stood up. Her body shook as her skin seemed to change color and flow. Previously pimply, her forehead became smooth. Her face radiated light. Always dry and rough, her hair became lustrous. She smiled with an inner joy that changed her entire demeanor. "My daughter," Aaron addressed Pnina, "you are well. How do you feel?" "I'm wonderful," she said, touching her stomach. Fresh tears flowed from her sparkling eyes. "And I am with child. I can feel him. He is strong and healthy. God bless." "You are cleared of all charges," Aaron said, "and fully permitted to return to your husband. Though it is clear the two of you should be more open and trusting of each other. May your marriage be loving, fruitful, and long." Pnina reached down to her discarded shawl on the courtyard floor. She picked it up and covered her hair. As she touched her hair, she noticed the new texture. She looked at it with wide eyes. She then touched her face and felt the smoothness and absence of pimples. Her smile widened even more as she walked towards Adiver at the edge of the courtyard. "You survived," Adiver whispered as she approached. "Yes. Let us return to our tent. We have much to discuss." They walked side by side, arm's length apart. The crowd parted like the sea, making way for the reunited couple. In the tent, Adiver paced back and forth while Pnina sat on the cot. They looked at each other and did not speak for several minutes. "The bitter waters have proved your innocence. So tell me, why? Why did you visit Puria?" "I was too embarrassed and proud to tell you before. Puria prepares potions to help women have children. I was desperate to give you a healthy child. I needed us to have a child after so many miscarriages. I couldn't bear our childlessness. I would risk anything, even your anger and the bitter waters, to have a healthy child." "You should have told me," Adiver said, edging closer to his wife. "I wasn't sure you would understand. I didn't want to disappoint you if it didn't work. I still had many weeks to continue the potions." Pnina took Adiver's hand. "You dared much," Adiver said. "I was ready to divorce you." "I know, but now I am transformed. I feel stronger, healthier, and more beautiful. I can feel a child in my womb." She put Adiver's hand on her stomach. "He is strong, much stronger than any of my others. This child will survive." "After all these years? That is incredible." Adiver hugged Pnina, picked her off of her feet, and twirled her around. "I'm sorry I ever doubted you." He placed her gingerly back on the ground. "Did you just call the child he? How do you know?" "I can feel him so strongly. I just know. And Moses said that if I were innocent, we will be blessed with a male child." "What shall we call him?" Adiver grinned. "How about Martok?" Pnina suggested. "The bitter that became sweet." "Martok, son of Adiver," he said, looking up and embracing Pnina again. "I can live with that." This has been The Levite Sotah, written by Ben-Tzion Spitz, narrated by Jennifer Kahen.